Hello everybody, my name is Spartan Elite 43, and welcome to the series that you have all been waiting for. Me taking a tour of the USS New Jersey. So, before we get into the video, we got a lot of people to thank here. I have some on screen for you guys. These guys all donated to make this video possible, but I also want to say thank you to Ryan Szimanski and the Museum New Jersey for allowing us to come aboard and for taking us on a tour throughout the entire ship. It was fantastic, and also shooting the 5-inch gun. So hopefully you guys are ready for an absolute doozy of a series. We're going to split it up and try to make this as much footage of the ship as we can give you guys. So with that being said, let's get to the footage.
Looking. She was the only one of the 4 Iowas to get redecked in the 80s. So New Jersey was brought back first in 82, and then Iowa, Missouri, and Wisconsin in 88. By then they realized they had an issue with the rotting wood, and they didn't want to pay to do it to all the ships because they knew they were only going to be around a short period of time at that point. But by the time they got to Wisconsin, they're like, no, we just got to do it right. So us, Missouri, Iowa, we're still, all 3 of us are in the middle of redecking the ship. The federal government couldn't afford it, but us non-profit museums are trying to. And Wisconsin's still sitting there with their beautiful new deck. So you'll see, this looks like garbage. This is going to be one of the last areas we hit. We've already started on the fantail. It's something like 43,000 square feet that we expect will take us about 5 years and $5 million to do. Wow. So just keep that in mind as we walk up here. You're going to see we've ripped up a lot of the wood and it's bare metal. So that is all stuff that's in the process of being redone. Fair enough. You're also going to notice a lot of spider webs around the ship. As we're ripping up the wood, we're finding a lot of insects living in the rotten wood. And so now that the insects are exposed, there's a ton of spiders making their home on the ship. And as soon as we finish redecking, that'll stop being an issue. The teak deck does 2 things. One, it's less slippery than the bare steel like this. And 2, this was the insulation during World War II. All of the berthing compartments are below us. So the 2 inches of teak keeps the South Pacific sun off of the steel deck. And we can really tell when we rip up a section that there's no teak under it. It immediately starts to cook under there.
Yeah, that's the thing about a giant oven. I mean, the sun is not exactly nice to you.
No. Let's check out the captain's cabin just while we're here. Feel free to look around.
No, this is the cabin where there was, I don't know if you remember, Ron, there was a pool outside.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's pretty sick.
And we can look down into it, the former pool. I'll tell you about it. Okay. So the captain of an Iowa-class battleship, as built, had 3 bedrooms on board. This one is the at-sea cabin. So, or excuse me, it's the in-port cabin. He can only use this space if we're in port. Otherwise, he has to use one of his sea cabins, which are up behind where the ship is steered from. That way,
he's close by when they need him.
exactly. If there's any sort of emergency, day or night, they can grab them and take them in there. But this space is where you would entertain guests. So we had the comedian Bob Hope on board on 2 separate occasions. We had some Scandinavian royalty on board on a couple of occasions. We had the president of South Korea on board on a couple of occasions. President Ronald Reagan came on board in 1982. So they would have come in here, and this is where they would have had their fancy entertaining going on. So the ship has a silver set. What you're seeing there is approximately half of it. The silver set was bought by the state for the first Battleship New Jersey back in 1906. that ship was a member of the Great White Fleet. After World War I, that ship was sunk to test aircraft against battleships. So before that happened, the Navy took the silver set off, and whenever there is a New Jersey in commission, the silver goes on the ship. Whenever there isn't one, it goes back to the state. And some states put it on display in their state house. Wisconsin's silver set is on display right there in Nauticus outside of the ship. And the governor of New Jersey uses theirs at one of their mansions at Drumthwacket. The governor of New Jersey has more mansions than any other state. 3. They've got
There's Island Beach, there's Drumthwacket, and
I think there's one up in Trenton too.
Gotta flex on all the other governors, right?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like, it is literally New Jersey. You can't have it. You gotta flex.
now, what happens when the submarine New Jersey comes in?
So submarines tend to not carry silver services or other stuff like that. They don't entertain many guests. So there is a question. We've been talking with the crew of the submarine. Some of the prospective crew have been out, including the prospective commanding officer. And we've been talking about maybe giving them one full place setting or something like that, because there isn't really room for much else. This is about 40 out of 120 pieces. And the picture there, you can see the full set out of the governor's mansion. So anyway, Battleship New Jersey goes in and out of commission several times throughout her career. And when she's finally decommissioned for the last time in '91, the silver goes back to Drumthwacket, and the governor uses it for entertaining guests there. When the ship turns into a museum, we say, hey, the ship is being used again, we would like the silver. The governor says, no, the ship's not in commission, which means we get the silver. So both groups go to the Secretary of the Navy, who actually is the owner of it, and does one of those, Mom, they won't let us have our silver. And so Wisdom of Solomon, Secretary of the Navy, says, children, you each get half. So we've got half of the silver set here to put on display. They've got the other half up at Drumthwacket to use for entertaining.
Fair enough.
Punch bowl?
Yeah, the punch bowl up there. They do all their entertaining over the winter. So we put it on display, May to September, and then we take it back and they have it September to May.
Cool.
Alright, let's keep heading up.
So quick as we're passing, I just gotta ask, is that the second paint scheme that you were talking about in the video the other day? That's not the Measure 22, that's the...
Yes, yeah, that's the late war paint scheme.
Okay.
Exactly. You basically just draw a straight line from the lowest point of the hull down. That's all dark blue, and anything
I gotta lie,
above it is
that's
light
pretty
gray.
awesome. I need something like that in my room. That's pretty sweet.
So Ryan, with space being a premium on a ship, especially at sea, if the captain couldn't be in there when they're out at sea, did they use it for any other storage? Was it used for any other purpose?
I don't believe that space ever was.
I mean, for like, if they had like an admiral on board or something like that.
There is a separate area for admirals.
Oh, okay.
And I suspect the captain would still spend some free time in there. Like, there isn't really much in the way of dressers up in his at-sea cabins.
Okay.
And there isn't a pantry up there, so I suspect he would still go in to take meals, get dressed, that sort of stuff. He's just sleeping up there. So yeah, some spaces have multiple uses. That one does not seem to. Could the last person up here just put this rope back across the ladder?
Sure.
And there's another rope right at the door here.
Okay.
Now this is what we're talking about.
Didn't you pick up one the other day? Sorry, I watched videos.
It is a different type of panel, but and
Are you sure? It would be a heck of a surprise for them.
Yeah. Lawrence, do you have any questions in here before we keep going?
No, I think I'm good. How many people, actually I do, how many people would be in here at one time, generally?
Probably about a dozen.
Okay. So,
Now, was that throughout the whole service, or was it more like during like World War II, and they maybe kind of dropped off?
This space only existed in the 1980s.
Yeah. Okay.
So there would have been no one in here World War II, Korea, Vietnam.
Oh, okay.
Because it wasn't Admirals Cabinet.
So, all right.
Well, let's head out that door.
This direction. Oh, that's cool.
So what are, those are all the range finders. So we've got main battery range finders that can aim the 16-inch guns. Those are the spots. And then we've got secondary battery range finders that can aim the 5-inch guns. Those are skies. And worst comes to worst, you can always cross connect them if all your main battery range finders go down.
Yeah. I say, watch your head.
Yeah.
Old tapes.
What is that thing?
It's a computer.
If you can head right out that door.
Excuse me. We got our 5-inch guns.
Yeah, so in the 1980s, one of our cruisers shot down, I think it was a Libyan passenger liner, might have been Iranian. All these aircraft have IFF transponders, identification friend or foe. So you can tell based on the electronic signature, hey, this is one of ours, or hey, that's Russian make, or whatnot, so you can decide if it's hostile or not. For whatever reason, this aircraft did not have its IFF transponder transmitting, and so an American Aegis cruiser picks it up on the radar and it's flying overhead. It looks like an attack vector, so they shoot it down, kill a bunch of civilians. So at that point, they installed giant tape decks like that in all of the combat engagement spaces on Navy ships, so that if a decision like that is made again, they have a recording of what was said, so they can decide, yeah, no, everything's above board here, or nope, they made a terrible decision, we've got to pay reparations and fire this guy. So, you see the circle here, right outside the captain's cabin. That was a 40mm gun tub as built. It's one of 20 that this ship carried during World War II. In the Vietnam War, they removed all 20 of those guns because, yeah, they...
Basically useless at that point.
Exactly, they're fine against propeller planes, but they can't track a jet aircraft. Hey, Rich.
How's everybody today? Well, there we go.
So they removed them all, and they didn't go through the time or expense to cut away the gun tubs. So Captain Snyder, who was our first captain during the Vietnam War, decided to film with boiler feed water and turn them into swimming pools. So New Jersey was the only battleship to ever have swimming pools on board. His replacement, Captain Peniston, decided that was a silly idea, so they cut away the gun tub, and you can only see the forward third.
I bet that was popular though, to have a swimming pool.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of Captain Snyder in it. I've never seen pictures of anyone else in there, so I don't know what's going on.
Oh, so then he's that guy. He's that guy. He gets the swimming pool and then he just he makes everybody stand and watch him.
There were two, one on each side, and I've heard that he invited people to come in, but I just have no evidence that anyone else ever used it.
Gotcha.
So, the bulk of them, yeah.
Bulk of them, like even the 40mm.
Yeah, and ours were removed, of course, when they were no longer used post-war, and they just don't fit with our configuration. So we do have one 40mm back on the fantail that we know was taken off of this ship. And if we make it back there, I'll tell you that whole story. But other weapon systems here, that is a 40mm saluting gun under the blue cover. And we do still use that.
Yep.
And the one next to it is a Mark 38. It's a 25mm Bushmaster. It's the same kind of gun that is in the turret of a Bradley fighting vehicle. And the Navy started installing those in the early 90s on ships as a defense against small boats. So on this ship, they installed a mounting base for it. They retrained the Marines to man those instead of manning one of these 5-inch guns. So when one of our contacts at Picatinny Arsenal called us and said, hey, I've got a couple of these guns that are going to be destroyed. Do you want them for the museum? We said, yeah, we'll take one. We've got the mounting point. We'll put it on there, and life is good. So we installed it. We're now the only museum that has one of those because it's a contemporary weapon. There aren't any others on display anywhere. And then we found out, oh yeah, they put the base on, but there were so few of them in the inventory that only ships operating in the Persian Gulf had them installed. And when one ship was leaving the Persian Gulf, they would crane it off and drop it onto the ship coming in to relieve it. So our sister ships Missouri and Wisconsin carried those during the Gulf War. We were slated to go in and replace them if the war lasted any longer than it did. Ended up ending quickly. We get decommissioned with the mounting point, but never having received the gun. But now this is the only one you can go to see one of those.
Nice.
Happens a lot at museums, stuff like that.
Dream lover will come my way, girl to hold in my arms. Hey, somebody has good taste in music.
Yeah, we're doing Korean War Day on board. The South Korean consul's going to come and we're opening a new exhibit at 11. So there's some reenactors down below and we've got the period music playing.
Awesome.
What's the plaque out there?
Above us here,
Yeah.
those are our battle ribbons. New Jersey earned 19 battle stars through World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and into the 1980s. And each one of those events has a ribbon associated with it. So we're the most decorated museum ship, the most decorated ship that is still around.
You go get that picture?
Huh?
Most decorated
We'll get it,
battleship,
but
It's right there.
Second most decorated
Is
in the
it?
Navy, or
Yeah, Enterprise has its beat by 1 battle star. If we had
Oh,
gotten
okay.
to go to the Persian Gulf, we'd have edged them out, but I don't think it's appropriate that
Mhm.
Enterprise keeps it for what she did. And the fact that she earned it all in one darn war over a pretty brief 10-year career, we're around for 50 years, is pretty epic. So this is the flag bridge here. This is where the Admiral commands a fleet from. So all of our non-radio communication devices are here. So the Admiral can be sitting in his chair and he says, signal the fleet to do X, Y, whatever. So you can do blinking lights, you can do semaphore flags, or you can do signal flags, which are from the flag bags back there. Even when there isn't an Admiral on board, this is still where the signalman would be. Right, so this is where Halsey commanded 3rd Fleet from during the Battle of Leyte Gulf. It's where Spruance commanded 5th Fleet from during the attack on Truk Lagoon when New Jersey and Iowa actually fired their guns on Japanese warships for the only time in history. So this is a pretty important space.